Eagle Nation will continue our summer sit-downs with Georgia Southern football, making our way about the coaching staff with new defensive coordinator and first-time defensive coordinator Will Harris. Will, good to visit with you, man.
Yeah, nice to see you again, brother. Hope all is well.
I know summer's winding down, camp is fast approaching, the season is fast approaching, and you haven't coached a game yet outside of the spring game. But tell me
Right.
what it's been like as a defensive coordinator for the first time in your career.
Well, it's been awesome, kind of just starting from scratch, and just building a culture here as far as with the offense and defense. But man, it's been awesome. We got great guys here, and I'm excited to see what we do in this fall camp and season.
Had a chance to check out your Zoom from the Savannah luncheon not too long ago, and a couple things really popped out. How do you go from being a firefighter to coaching? How does that happen?
Man, it was a crazy transition because I had to completely change my mindset. That's funny you brought that up, man. That was something I always wanted to do just growing up, and my dad is in the military, so it's kind of one of them things that was just kind of fell in my lap. But I had a higher calling from the Lord, man, and I think this is where I'm supposed to be at. So it's been an easy transition, but different one in the beginning.
And you actually got into coaching by the help of Snoop Dogg?
There you go. And so that's kind of how it happened, man. I was just literally just training kids, and yeah, he was just like, "Hey, why don't you come over here and train Cordell?" And he had a couple other kids, and then he was like, "Man, you should coach." And then that's kind of how it started. Long story short.
The various experiences that you've had really making your way up from the bottom levels, mostly out in the West, but to finally spend the last 4 years at Washington after a great
Yeah.
playing career at USC. When you work for guys like Chris Peterson and Jimmy Lake, what do you pick up?
You pick up a lot, man. And not only those two guys, man, just from even Pete Carroll and Brent Brennan, who's at San Jose State, Ron Carrick, who's at San Jose State, just a couple of guys just always picking up things that you can, take with you at the next spot. And I learned a lot from Clay Helton as well, just in my short period of time. And I'm excited to continue that as well. But you really bring in just I would say more so importantly, just for those two guys, since you brought those two up, man, it's just how we were all together as a staff and just building it that way and making sure we got that brotherhood. And I think that was one of the biggest things that we did have at the University of Washington, and especially on the defensive side, is we were always locked in with one another. And not only that, man, we always taught a lot of techniques. I think Chris Peterson was very big on techniques and just development part of it. And that's kind of one of the things that we're bringing here at Georgia Southern is making sure that we're going to be technique sound.
You bring up brotherhood, and that's a word that gets said a lot in this program in a very good
Correct.
way, and that goes back years and years and years. How would you say that Georgia Southern's version of brotherhood compares to other places you've been?
Well, here is just I would say a small community as far as Georgia Southern, Statesboro. And then not only that is just Clay Helton's bringing that here with the tradition they've already had, man. And it's been special. I've obviously heard little here and there things about Georgia Southern being on the West Coast. But being here now, I'm like, wow, this is a special place. And I understand and see why they got so much pride in the Georgia Southern football. But man, that's kind of one of the biggest things that we're doing here. And I always say, man, we call it crossbreeding, as what we're talking about brotherhood, because a lot of people say it, but how are you going about that, creating that brotherhood? And one of the things that we do is we call it crossbreeding. That's one of the things I did get from Chris Peterson. And what we're doing is we're actually having our D line get with our DBs and our linebackers getting with our D line and doing things together, events together, barbecues together, and it's getting it to make undersure that you guys understand who your teammate is. And so I think that's one of the things that we're doing here now.
There's plenty of guys that have been here for multiple years, but this team is going to look a lot different when they take the field for 2022. There's more than 50 new players listed on the
Yeah.
roster. How do you incorporate what's been here with what just arrived here?
It's just getting to know your personnel. That was one of the things that I've been asked a couple of times is understanding your personnel. Certain things that we done really well last year, and certain things that they didn't. And I'm bringing in some of the things that we did really well at Washington, and some of the things that we didn't. So it's just finding that part of it. Then not only that, it's just starting from day one, basics, just the fundamentals of things. And I think that's one of the biggest things right now is making sure that every single time we're talking about something, it's going back to the basics of it, the fundamentals. And I'm excited about that because we do have some really good newcomers coming in that is going to help us this year for sure.
In that Eagles secondary, there were a lot of key injuries. Derek Canteen barely played a quarter last year before he got hurt at FAU, and you had the season-ending injuries for guys like Tyler Bride and Seth Robertson. But being able to get them back healthy, and you throw in a Wyland Free from Fresno State to Jalen Denton from Ole Miss to
Right.
helping you craft this Eagle defense, what have you noticed about that combination thus far?
I think the most important part is we got a great strength and conditioning staff, man. Coach Bobby Steiner, and then not only that, man, I think he did a really good job in spring of keeping these guys healthy. And then not only that, he's keeping that going into fall camp, which I'm excited about because this is a long season. And then not only that, you watch it now these days, man, is how are you finding ways to keep guys on the field? And not only that, just wear their bodies down. So that was one of the biggest things that we did when we got here, was just trying to figure out ways to keep our guys healthy, eating right, sleeping right. And that's one of the bigger things about it. But now just talking about like guys that are coming in to help us, you saw about Waylon Free and then Denton, those guys, just more experience. I think that's one of the biggest things about it, man, is coming in to help us with some of the experience they've had. They've played at the other levels. So I'm excited about those guys to come in and help us as well.
You told me not too long ago that one of your major coaching mentors is Ken Norton Jr., somebody that
Yeah.
USC, great NFL career, went back and coaching for the Trojans. What'd you pick up from him?
Man, we can talk all day about that guy. I will tell you this. One of the reasons why I got in, like I said, the coaching world, I gave him a call when I thought about going into it. And I told him he was one of the reasons why. It's because not only that, he wasn't my position coach, but what he did was he helped me get through the college experience of a player, and then kind of when I went through my injuries and things of that nature. But I picked up a lot just as far as his faith, the way he treats his family, how he goes about his family life, and how he went about his college and professional career and then went into coaching, and just seeing him still progress that. But I picked up a lot, man, and I appreciate that, man, in many ways, many ways.
You brought up your own personal injuries. We mentioned some of the ones that Georgia Southern's defense had to go through. Last year, you want to add in a Marquez Watson Trent who didn't finish the
Right.
first game last year. He tore his ACL against Gardner Webb, and unfortunately, a byproduct of that was the Eagles gave up a lot of big plays last year.
Right.
But the one thing that Washington's defense has done really well the last few years is not give up big plays. The fewest number of 40-yard plays allowed, I think over the last 6 years combined, 4 times you've led the country in fewest plays of 40-plus allowed. How can you get that mentality and help rebuild this defense?
I think it's the details. It really is the details of going behind that. One of the biggest sayings that we have at Georgia Southern is protecting Eagle Nation. And how we're doing that is playing everything from what we call top down. And, I don't want to get too much into that, but it's kind of one of the things that we teach as far as understanding our leverages and our tackling and things of that nature. And then understanding also our coverage, where our weaknesses are in our coverages, and making sure that we're gaps down on our defense. But yeah, man, I think that's one of the biggest things that we kind of get away from is just, we always talk a lot about scheme and trying to figure out how to take this play away. But really, it just comes back to our fundamentals and our details of our techniques.
You also brought up in the Savannah Luncheon something you're calling Eagle tackling, and you can relate to fundamentals. And the one thing that maybe gets overlooked the most on defense, simply being able to get somebody on the ground in a fundamental way. So how do you preach this Eagle tackling?
Well, I think that's one of the biggest things now that our game's evolving to is just this tackling of taking our head out of it. And I'm very, very big about that, just as far as the things that I've seen in the coaching world and obviously as playing. But I think that's one of the biggest things that we want to teach our guys here is, like I said earlier, is understanding when we're an outside tackler or an inside out tackler and understanding our leverages. But we're going to be a low shoulder tackling team. We're never going to be going above the strike zone, is which we call it, below the numbers, top of the kneecaps. And so understanding that part of it and just overemphasizing it every single day is just like anything else we do. If we were to tie our shoe or brush our teeth, it's something that we're doing every single day. And they got to make sure that we're teaching it and coaching it. And it's ingrained in us every single day we get out there on the football field.
If there's 3 levels on a defense, we mentioned a lot about the secondary already. It seems that linebacker-wise, there may be some work to do when you lose 2 starters from about 3/4 of the season, the 2 true freshmen last year, both transferring out, but then you move to the defensive line, and it might be the most experienced D-line in the country with a couple of 6-year guys in Justin Ellis and also Dylan Springer on the other side. You've got Christian Varner from North Carolina. How do you build up the linebacking core while also fortifying the defensive line?
Yeah, just starting with the defensive line, man. Everybody's I think we got our pros and our cons of what we want to work on and things like that. But I would say more so the D line, man, they come with a lot of experience. But I'm excited because now, okay, cool, you guys understand what we're putting on you of our standards. And here we go. And I have high standards for those guys to come in and make sure that we're technique and detailed about everything, and get after the quarterback. And not only that, we'll go back into the linebacker room. Yeah, okay, so now we lost some guys that did have some experience, and we do have some guys that got some type of experience back there, but also they got a chip on their shoulder now. Like you talked about Marquez Watson. And then not only that, we got Kadri Jackson and then a couple other guys in that room, and I can just keep going on with the list. But they all got a chip on their shoulder now because they understand like they got to be the glue to this defense. We got to make sure that we are the best tackle and linebacker group in the world. And that's how I feel about it. And then just to go back with the secondary as well, and we keep talking about it, but we got to protect Eagle Nation. We can't give up big plays. We got to make sure that we're taking that away from another team and making sure we're taking away those big plays every game.
If anybody watched the spring game, of course, the buzz was about how much more quickly the offense was moving, the emphasis on the passing game, while still understanding the running game will have an important part. But on your side, the defensive side, there was definitely a noticeable nickel in, and that's something that Georgia Southern hasn't tinkered with much since probably the 2017 season,
right,
or something you had used at Washington, a number of different stops. But how is that position so important in what you guys are trying to accomplish?
Well, he's got to be a hybrid guy, man. And in our defense, a lot of people see it as more of like that safety, bigger body type. For us, man, it's more of that quicker guy that's gritty. And not only that, he can play in the box, but also can play man to man. We've had a lot of success with that position at Washington and just in our techniques, how we play it. But our game is evolving, like you just said. You talk about our offense playing at high speed. And so not only that, we got to be able to create those advantages for us with those guys are going so fast with having 4 and 5 receivers out there at times, man, and making sure that we're able to cover down on those guys. So I think that's what our game's evolving to.
What would represent a successful fall camp as you guys get ready for the opener against Morgan State?
I think more importantly is just consistently working on just our techniques. I think I always say this, technique will set you free. And then not only that, what you said earlier, man, is making sure that we always eliminate the big plays. And so we're going to come up with a deal. We're calling it 30 for 30, man. We want to have 30 sacks and 30 turnovers. And so that's one of the things that we're going to make sure that we're overemphasizing this fall camp is getting after the quarterback and getting after that football.
No, there's a little bit of downtime in between spring practice and getting into fall camp, which is going to start here on August the 3rd. But how would you describe your level of anticipation getting to be in a coaching position that you've never had before in a place that you've never been before?
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I've already cut my vacation short in my head. Every single day I got this phone right here, making sure I do my recruiting and reaching out to our guys. And I'm asking the guys how PRPs are going. That's our player run practices, and just making sure that I'm staying glued into what's going over there at Georgia Southern as our time is away. But I've been excited about it, man. I can't wait to get started. I've been talking to Coach Helton about it, man. We're just making sure that we're getting our guys ready to go for fall camp, but making sure that we're keeping them healthy too as well. But I'm excited about it. I can't wait.
Anticipation and excitement are high for the 2022 Georgia Southern football season. Defensive coordinator Will Harris, appreciate the time. We'll catch up with you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.